Hi, Karen Craig Parker here with your weekly Human Design Evolution Report. I usually wing these reports and do them off the top of my head, but there's so much going on today, I gotta have notes. So forgive me if I look down and check my notes because there's a lot going on. This week is really kind of an interesting banner week because to a certain degree, when we look at the cycle that we're in and the need or the desire for this creative quarter that we're in to find momentum that carries us forward in our creative process, if we look at the fact that this creative quarter is happening within cycles within cycles within cycles, and one of the cycles within which this drive and this desire for momentum is happening is within the cycle that we call the pandemic. And the pandemic itself has a design of wanting us to look at our past patterns. Pandemics start with the gate 44 in the sun, or the sun in the gate 44. So a pandemic by nature is inviting us to take stock of how we're behaving, what kind of patterns do we have, what have we done to get ourselves where we are right now, what patterns, what karma do we need to untangle ourselves from in order for us to reestablish perhaps new patterns that are more worthy of who we are. So we have sort of this push me, pull you quality happening between this cycle that we're in that's very circumstantial with this creative quarter that we're in, and this sort of, I want to go forward and do all these new things and evolve and mutate. This sort of energy is kind of clashing with, but when do we get to go back to normal? And that dialogue between momentum and a desire to return to normal gets amplified about 1 billion-fold this week with the transitory energies that we are encountering as we go through this week. I would like to rename this week Retrograde-a-palooza. That's really kind of where it's at this week. We already have Pluto in retrograde, which is always an invitation to dredge up the shadow and to look at what's come before. The shadow side of this Pluto retrograde is all about looking at, because it's in the gate 61, the bigger picture and what's the bigger reason why something is happening, what's the bigger perspective that we can take. But of course, we're looking at the shadow side of it, which means we also have the potential to take the smaller perspective, to get stuck in stories of victimhood, to get lost in the endless question of why me, why this, why that, and kind of get into a self-pity party with this shadow element if we're not careful. Ultimately, from exploring the why are we here, we, at the end of this cycle, emerge with a deeper understanding of the bigger picture, the bigger perspective as to why we're in this mess right now. What generated the circumstances that facilitated us having this massive global event that has the promise to redefine for us what is normal, and ultimately gives us an invitation to explore where are the patterns that we've had in the past, where have they perhaps been hurting us or causing not just pain, but where have they been limiting our ability to share? Where have they been blinding us to the idea that we are all interconnected and we're all one, that we all live under the same sun and occupy the same planet and share the same resources? Where have we been living as if this is not true? And what do we need to clean up so that we can move forward? Here's the cycle of momentum towards building a world of equitable, sustainable peace with sustainable resources, right? That's the first little cycle within a cycle. The next retrogrades we have to talk about is Venus goes into retrograde this week. Remember too, just as I'm saying this, anytime we have a retrograde cycle, we're looking at exploring past patterns, and we're looking at karma. Not so much karma like I killed you, you killed me in this lifetime, past lifetime. We're talking about patterns that create. Karma is a pattern that creates in the way in which I talk about it. So when Venus goes retrograde and we're looking at relationship energy, which is what Venus is all about, we're looking at past patterns in relationships. So Be prepared, because your ex is potentially going to be calling you or connecting with you, or people you haven't heard from in a long time may show up out of the blue in a Venus retrograde cycle. But right now, this Venus is going retrograde in the gate 45, which is a gate of leadership. It's a gate of sharing. And we're exploring, how do we share? What did we share? How did our sharing maybe go awry? Where do we need to be perhaps more generous? Where do we maybe need to set better boundaries? We're exploring sharing and ultimately using sharing as a place where we lead, a place where we serve. But we can't share. You can't share if you have nothing to share. And you can't share if you're sharing because you're trying to compensate for an internal lack of self-worth, which is usually one of the problems we get into in our partnerships, right? We go into partnerships and then we're trying to use our partnership as a place to heal our sense of self-worth, or where we perhaps are lacking in our self-value. And we project it onto our partner that our partner should do that work for us and give us all the things we need to demonstrate to us our own value. Or we go overboard trying to show our partner how absolutely valuable we are, and that they will never be able to live without you because you're that precious, and you are. And it just gets messed up. It gets really messed up. So we're beginning to explore with this Venus retrograde our own sense of value. And how do we share better? How do we share more effectively? How do we share more sustainably? How do we share based on a reframe of our sense of value, both personally, and how do we express our understanding of other people's values, and how do we live as not only valuable beings ourselves, but how do we begin to change the way in which we treat each other, with the idea that we are each inherently valuable and consequently are worthy of being shared with, of being supported. And how do we do it in such a way that we don't deplete ourselves and burn ourselves out, or burn out our resources? So that's the next retrograde. Now, here comes the one that I think is by far the most interesting, although they're all kind of pretty interesting. Saturn and Jupiter are also retrograde, and they're retrograde sort of quasi-conjunct in human design. They're conjunct-ish, not quite exactly, but close, in the gate 60. Now, Saturn brings us the energy of karma, and when we have a retrograde cycle again, we have the journey of untangling karma. So we have sort of double untangling karma with Saturn in the gate 60, Jupiter also occupying the gate 60. Now the gate 60 is the gate of conservatism. Now remember, we're in the spring cycle, we're in the cycle of the template, we're wanting to go forward with our creative momentum. That's kind of where we are right now in the human design creative year. We have all this thrust for momentum. And then we have Saturn and Jupiter in this retrograde position in the energy lighting up the archetype of conservatism. So anytime we have sort of a retrograde cycle, it's a cycle of introspection. It's deep thought. It's deep exploration. It's internal processing. It's exploration. And it is by nature somewhat isolated. Of course, Saturn in this position is extra isolated, right? It's a deep internal sort of isolated, socially isolated, if you will, position. So we have this energy of wanting to go inward. And at the same time, it's duking it out in this energy that has the potential to be very conservative. In other words, it has an energy that under the current circumstances is going to want us again to go back to normal. We don't want to be isolated, right? We want to go back to normal. And yet Saturn is demanding of us that we continue to isolate, because until we go inward and get ourselves aligned and clean up that old karma and get rid of those old patterns, we can't go forward without dragging the old mess that got us here in the first place forward with us and potentially recreating a cycle like this again. So we have this kind of perfect arena with this configuration in the next little bit for us to be personally exploring within ourselves. How do we go forward? How do we let go of the past? Oh my gosh, I wish it could stay normal, knowing full well there's no way we're going to get back to normal. There's no normal to go back to. We are now deep in the middle of a void. We are bridging a gap between what was and what will be. And if we don't keep pointing ourselves forward, we're going to fall into a hole, okay? And we can't go back. So our best bet at this point, right smack dab in the middle where we are, is to do the inner work so that we can keep going forward on a bigger level, because we're looking at collective energies. I fully expect, as we continue to cultivate and explore what is the new normal going to be, that there will be people who will really want to keep going back to the way things were. That this conflict between forward momentum and conservatism is going to continue to be up in front of our faces right now. And I want to invite you, regardless of what your position is, to really celebrate the people who want to go back to the old ways. We need that energy. And as much as we may resist it, conservatism is vital to momentum and it's vital to evolution. If you are going forward willy-nilly without contemplating what has come before, and you are throwing the baby out with the bathwater, if you're not consciously and carefully looking at what did work before, what is working, what in this karmic pattern was worthy of salvaging and bringing forward with us, if you're not having that conversation and you're just barreling forward without respect to where we've been, that momentum isn't any less intense and perhaps reckless than trying to push us back to where we were before. So we are in this middle point where we are hammering out our momentum and we are taking direction with that momentum, but we can't take direction with it until we make sure we're bringing with us all the things that did work, all the things that were good, all the things that are going to continue to support the foundation of our growth and expansion. Okay, those are the retrograde cycles for this week. Be prepared for things not moving forward as quickly as you would hope. Be prepared for feeling a little bit like you're stuck in cosmic goo for a while. It's going to get better, but we've got to do this inner work. It's so important. We are laying the foundation, setting the stage, building the template verbally for where we want to go. We're setting goals, we're setting intentions. And as we get through this cycle, midway through the summer, you'll start to see some lightning. Then we can move forward with a little bit more intention and a little bit more clarity and a little bit more deliberateness as we continue to redefine for ourselves what the new normal really is. Now, that's that. Let's look at the sun and the earth. The sun starts this week in the gate 23. The earth is in the gate 43. These two energies form a channel that is a channel that gives us the energy to change the way in which we see things, to change the way in which we think about things. This energy brings us a power to deeply transform the way you think about things and the ideas and inspirations that you have. This is powerful mutative thinking. It's the ability for us to assimilate and integrate new ideas, new concepts, new ways of seeing and perceiving the world. So this week really invites you, in the context of all of this, looking back and exploring and contemplating and dealing with inner alignment and inner untangling of karma, to also explore through insights, through awarenesses, through breakthroughs in the way in which you think, new possibilities that really literally will promise to open your eyes wide and give you bigger ways, broader ways, more empowered ways to be able to think about where you're headed in the future and what you want to create. Remember that everything we create starts first in mind. It starts first in mind by giving us the seed, a kernel of something that we can imagine and dream about. And we are so dreaming right now in this cycle that we're in. We're dreaming of possibilities, okay? This energy gives us the ability to begin to translate those dreams into language so that we can begin to look at and explore what we need to do to begin structuring our lives in a brand new way. We are transforming, we are mutating, we are evolving. And this energy promises to bring us the thought forms that facilitate for us in a much deeper way our own evolution. That's it. Take care of yourselves. Get some good sleep. Rest. Be well. Have a great week.